Vayoled, number 5, and he produced with the tipcha, so connected to what's come from before and closing off the phrase. And he produced his own family at that stage, and he started his own family at that age, and he produced a male offspring as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading line. So this is going to go back to Srug setting this as a standard for the generation and the standard to go forward, that 30 is the age to get married and start to have a family, and he followed his own concept. Et Nahor, with the stabilizing Sof Pasuk. With Nahor, his firstborn, he established his follower in order to reach the next generation. Other than stating his connection to Nahor and his again being a mentor to him, that's the stability that we're seeing in his name.
This is not Nahor. Oh, this is Nahor, Terek's father, and Terek's son is also Nahor. Right. He's named after Zadie. That's pretty modern. But they were sorry.
So as we read through, we're going to notice that Srug in his name is separated out from Shloshim, from the concept of 30, because up until then he's did we say the phrase with his name, he's pretty well indoctrinated into his father's way of life, and then all of a sudden he separates himself out by making a concept of his own. The 30 is yet again the age to start having family, and Vayoled is him imposing this standard onto himself, and Et Nahor is saying that Nahor is going to have his own existence from here on in, despite the influence he'll have his own generation to lead. Vayechi Srug Shloshim Shana Vayoled Et Nahor. We are on page 144, 1123.
Can we just go, I just want to compare the sound. If you do the first, so going back even to 1117.
What year 1117?
Okay. Vayehi Aver.
Yeah.
Where it is hyphenated. The next one, Vayehi Peleg. Okay, also hyphenated. And yeah, and then 20 where it is not. And they have the same. They have the same mark.
So we're gonna read sentence from sentence. The first phrase.
Yeah. Because I want to hear the difference in the sound.
We'll start with 11:16.
Yeah.
Vayechi Aver. And 11:17. Vayechi Aver. 11:18. Vayechi Peleg. 11:19. Vayechi Peleg. 11:20. Vayechi Reu. 11:21. Vayechi Reu. 11:22. Vayechi Srug. Okay, so we've got the concept of when we have two separate notes, i.e. there's no dash joining, that it really is read rather quickly together. Vayechi Peleg and Vayechi Srug. Vayechi sort of words onto itself even though it's connected to the next one. Srug.
See, that one sounded more similar. 11:22.
So, but when you have the Munach Revi'i, Vayechi Reu, and the one before, 11:20, Vayechi Reu.
They were definitely
so
separate.
They are still, all of these are still Mishartim. All of these ones that are two separate notes are still words that are connected together. The first note still serves the second note, so they don't have that sharp pause in between them. But they get their own pronunciation with a little bit more sound to them.
Okay. All right.
And we will continue on.
It's confusing because there's hyphens in the English and hyphens in the Hebrew. I just noticed that.
Yes, so he's trying to be.
The match.
But no, there's not, because the like Hebrew 11:20, there's no hyphens in the Hebrew, but there's hyphens in the English.
11:20, and he lived, and hyphen he hyphen lived.
Vayechi, one word.
One word
Means
has
and he lived.
has that three English words as a translation. So I'm saying the three words are really the one word.
Right,
Hebrew words are composite. The vav at the beginning means and. So it's a separate word, but it's still part of the same vayechi. So you have to hyphen it together to say.
Are you wondering why there's no hyphen between vayechi and?
That's what you asked about. No, but that's what
But if you go to number 7 in that same 11:20 word 7,
So-
etzru, two words with shru, there's an equal sign as
Okay,
well.
so let's go back to sentence 11:18. Vayechi Peleg, and single dash he single dash lived, double dash or equal sign Peleg. Why do we have the double dash there? Because they're two different words. So we're trying to separate out what we've said as the meaning of Vayechi, and he lived. Those three words mean Vayechi, from Peleg, which is also connected because there's a dash in between it, but it's a separate word, and we're taking that one word and making that come out of it.
I don't know why I have to write "and he lived" in English with hyphens.
What he's trying to say is all those three words are connected
Really
as
make
one
one.
word.
What does Vayechi mean?
And he lived.
Okay, so it's not one English word. It's three English
I'm not
words.
saying he should write it without any
And it's one
a
word.
space, but
But he's saying the one word Vayechi turns into those three words, and that's why they're all
and I
connected.
wouldn't know that if he didn't have the hyphens. Okay.
That's what he's doing with the Hebrew, so he's being consistent with the English.
When you get to Shalim, you'll have plenty of time to talk to him how to read it.
Style is style, and consistency is consistency, and part of making something that's lasting is making it both internally and externally consistent. That is one of the biggest concepts in Gemara. We see all sorts of arguments and so on. How could Rava say this here when he said that there? You have to be, every phrase that you have to say has to be consistent with everything else that you've said for the rest of your life.
That's that famous
Otherwise
we
we need to explain what the difference is and what the circumstance was that allowed you to say something different in one place than in another.
Well, you know, there's a famous rabbi, they didn't even mention that, I don't think by his name, but you see what a high level he is. He touched every et in the Torah, and there's a reason for it. And he gets to et marbez, and he gets to one in Dvarim with Elohim, and he says there can't be anything, so he throws up the whole perush. And then later he probably found a meaning, and so he didn't mean well, he referred to the whole perush. It's a shame. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I thought it was Rabbi Akiva who found
No, it wasn't
the answer.
Rabbi Akiva.
No, Rabbi Akiva is the one who found the answer.
He found the answer, and then by then
that he couldn't find.
later it turns out that what's with Elohim, tell me Mazecha coming also. So this guy worked his whole life with the perush and threw it out. I mean, you have to admire him that he was so consistent, but then he did also that he could throw it out without. Okay, you can't.
By the way, I don't believe that.
The whole story?
Doesn't make any sense.
He would throw it out.
What? He was surprised there was a pasuk he'd never seen before.
Not a pasuk he'd never seen before, but he couldn't believe that. I can't believe that Dvarim is the first line that's an ant with Elohim. I don't know.
You
It's being very impulsive.
It's not like they dropped a pasuk on him that he hadn't seen before in his life. He was ready to write such a page, he
Right.
didn't know all the pasukim already.
We're going to continue on.
Yeah.
We are on 11:23. Vayechi.
Page 144.
With a munach, so this is going to separate out from what's come from before and move forward into what's going to go afterwards. Although Srud had his own views and opinions, in practical life he still adhered to old traditional rules and he lived by accepted standards, as indicated by the shape of the reading mark and by the lack of the extension sign, Hamshech. So we were just talking about that. So the words before Vayechi Peleg had the quote unquote extension sign. There were two words that were both together, and here he's saying, this guy doesn't have that extension sign. So it's not that he's living he's making his own rules. It's that he's keeping the old rules and allowing them to move forward. So that's why he gets that lack of connection, because he's not the one who's setting the tone from his own thoughts. He is setting the tone from the previously established principles and rules, which is what we would have expected for somebody who was so closely indoctrinated and tied to his father's teaching. Srug with a katon. So this is a two-part note. Although Srug had diverse ideas how to approach various situations and facts realistically, he limited himself to procedural techniques which were accepted by the test of time and approved as workable, as shown by the shape and broad meaning of the reading mark. So here I think we're actually taking the word katon, small, and we're darshaning on that word. We're taking the fact that the changes that he's making are not major conceptual changes. They are small procedural changes. So he's mostly from what's come from before, but adding some of his own. So that's the two-part. And he's doing katon. He's not doing big changes. So that's why we're saying here the broad meaning of the reading mark. So normally we'll say that with revi'i sometimes, but this is the first time I think that we've said it with the katon. So I think we're actually adding meaning to the fact that the note is called katon. It's called small. Acharei, and this is the first time that we've had the word acharei with a tavir. So tavir has. So we've said everybody how long do they live until they have their first son, and then how long they live after that, and that they have more children. This is the first time that we've said afterwards, and had the stabilizing concept of a tavir, which has the shell on the outside and the dot that's sort of sheltered on the inside of it. After close observation and personal experiences with his firstborn son Nachor, Srug noticed that among his other children, there were individuals who were more capable of leadership than the firstborn, as stressed by the shape of the reading mark. So he is taking his observations from afterwards that there are other children who have more characteristics than the oldest son, and he is appreciating that as well, and he's going to generate further stability for generations afterwards by nurturing them as well, and that's why we get this this nurturing tavir here, that he's seeing something in the other children that none of anybody up until now has seen, so that's why we have this tavir appearing for the first time in this similar group of words. Holido, Mercha, this is lightly connected to what's come from before, but mostly pushing us forward. However, his producing of a principal personality in his oldest son was still in accordance with the accepted tradition, as denoted by the directional shape of the reading mark. So, he is still lightly connected to the tradition of the oldest son having a position of power, but he is also going to recognize that there are other influences that he might want to continue. Et Nachor with a tipcha, with Nachor, so this is going to close off the phrase.
Et Nachor as opposed to Et Nachta, right?
Therefore, he continued to express his fatherly duties with Nachor in order to keep in line with the usual custom, as suggested by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. So again, here we see somebody who is very indoctrinated into ideas and traditions, saying that even though he recognizes that there's something else out there, he has to be very strongly tied to the tradition. Matayim, 200 with a munach. So this is separated out from what's come from before, but moving forward into a new reality. For 200 years until the end of his life, he gave the same attention to all of his children as expressed by the shape of the reading mark. So here he's going to separate out from what everybody else has done. So even though he's going to stick to the tradition, he is not only going to have the one favorite son, he is going to share his ability to be influential with more than one of his children. Shana, year, again with the stabilizing etnachta. Each remaining year of his life, he devoted his attention to all his children according to their needs, as specified by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So here he's using each year as the way to give power and influence to multiple children rather than just one leader for the generation. And that is the influence of each year that he splits his attention and the ability to influence going forward. Vayoled, and he produced with a mecha lightly connected to what's come from before, but mostly moving forward. Number 8, he adhered to his attitude, and he produced more children during his lifetime without expecting any prominence from his firstborn, as conveyed by the directional shape of the related reading mark. So here we see, as opposed to what we had said in the first half of the sentence, that he was still trying to stick to the tradition of giving the firstborn some extra covet, some extra honor. Here he sort of comes to the realization later in life that maybe the firstborn doesn't have to be the one who's the leader, and you can certainly recognize others and give them prominence as well. Banim with a tipcha. So again, the banim and banot are going to be separated because the tipcha has that pause afterwards. Tipcha is going to connect this to, or finish off the phrase that we started with Vayoled. All his sons he brought up in a similar manner to be able to face the hardships of practical life and be successful, as depicted by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. So he's going to give all of them the level of skill that you would have only given to the leader necessarily. Uvanot, his sons and daughters, he prepared with equal attention to be capable of assuming future family duties. And I had a little bit of difficulty with this. I get the idea that there is going to be stability in teaching the daughters, but there is the demarcation that is after Banim, and I'm not quite sure where in the parish he attended to that other than by using the phrase family duties, which is sort of what we had said in the previous pasuk, that the daughters did get prominence and the ability to inherit what Re'u was giving them, but they realized that they had a different position within the family. And I think by using the word family duties, he's tried to express the same concept without putting it out as strongly as he had in the previous sentence. We will read sentence 1123 out loud, and we're going to notice the acharei with the tavir separating out Srug from all of the other generations before him, because it gets that pause after it. And Nahor, when we read his name, we're again going to get a pause after him, because the Matayim Shana, the 200 years that Srug spends after Nahor is born, really are spent influencing the others in the generation as much as they are spent influencing Nahor. And Vayoled Banim, separated out from Banot. Again, I think this is trying to say the same thing that it said 2 sentences ago in 1121. And that's what the separation there is. Vayechi Serug Acharei Holido et Nahor Matayim Shana Vayoled Banim Banot
Toledo, that's like Toledo, right?
Sorry?
Toledo, that's like a lot like Toledo.
We're going to continue on. We're on page 145.
I did one thing to show. When they said that you remind me of it at the end of the Megillah when they say the law of the Chav, that Mordechai was like by poets. You see what I'm saying? About your shiur thing? Not to take away from you.
Let's continue.
And he lived, page 145, 1124, and he lived by with a monach, who's going to be separated from things that had come from before and mostly continue on into a new reality, if we will. Nahor followed the guidelines of his father, and he lived by the application of his ideas to life, as indicated by the shape of the reading mark. So again, we're saying that the separation here is that he is not imposing his own will on the generation, but rather he is continuing the concept that his father had taught him. And in that way, he's being separate, but together. Nahor, with the katon, so again, the two-part note. Nahor was prepared to satisfy challenges of his environment by instructions deriving from his father, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So again, because he lives in a different generation, he has different challenges, and he adapts to his environment and surroundings as well, and hence the two-part note going together with his name. Tesha, 9, with a mercha. So this is lightly connected to what's come from before, but mostly moving forward into what's going to go afterwards. 9 years of observations had contributed to the shaping of attitude to life, as shown by the directional shape of the reading mark. So here we get yet another significant number, but it's not something that he's imposing on the rest of the generation or philosophically imposing. It's just something that is personal to him. Hence the light connection to what's come from before. And we close off the phrase with ve'esrim and 20. The time of his observation and 20 years of his regular life were required for his character to be established and become a mature individual, as stressed by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. So after he's started to create a philosophy, it took him another 20 years to complete that philosophy and become who he was going to be. Shana, year, with the stabilizing etnachta. By this year, his outlook seemed to him to have ripened, and his experiences were convincing for conducting an independent life, as denoted by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. Here, it's the influence of the years on him, allowing him to be the character who he is going to remain, and that is the influence of each year, as opposed to the many other interpretations we've had to the word shana with the etnachta on it. Vayoled, and he produced with the tipcha. This is going to close off the phrase, going to look backwards to what we've come from before, and is going to pause after it. He decided to set up his home by establishing a family, and he produced a male offspring as referred backwards by the directional shape of the reading mark. So we had seen that 2 generations before they had tried to establish the concept of 30 for when you move out and start a family, and he is starting just 1 year before that. Nonetheless, he is starting family. Et Tarach, with Terach, he contemplated to building up with Terach the newborn son and individuality according to his ideals and concepts. So, because Vayoled with the Tipcha has a pause, and therefore at Terach is going to stand alone, he's saying that he's giving Terach some independence of thought and asking him to try to be an influence in and of himself. As we read through the sentence, we're going to see that Vayechi Nahor, that is going to stand alone. Tesha v'Yasrim is going to again stand alone. Shana is going to stand alone. And Vayoled is going to stand separate from Tarach. So each of the word groups is going to denote a different stage and a different set of attention and a different level of maturity and growth. And the final separation with Terach is going to give Terach his independence to be an influencer by himself. Vayechi Nachor Tesha v'Yasrim Shana Vayoled et Tarach.
Cool.
And I'm just seeing how much we've got left. I think we're going to do at least one more sentence.
Yeah.
Vayechi, and he lived with a Munach. Nachor was under the auspices of his father, and he lived later by an accepted pattern of rules and principles, as indicated by the shape of the related reading mark. So this is separated out from what has come from before. So while there are, again, we're trying to take all of these beginnings of sentences with the munach as opposed to the elided two words that have a rivi'i, to say that there is a connection to the previous generation and not a connection to his own personal influence from the beginning of his life. So that's the separation. The separation is that you're continuing on and not being the influencer from the beginning that some of the earlier generations were. Nachor, although with a rivi'i, so this is going to make him stand alone and be a broader influence. Although Nachor lacked additions of a sophisticated nature, he gave priority to his own evaluations, as shown by the shape and meaning of the reading mark. So he is going to be an influencer because of his own character and not necessarily previous traditions. Acharei with a pashta, after, number 3, after receiving his first son, Nachor rationalized, in contrast to his father, that since he was unique among the other children, he also deserved specific consideration, as expressed by the directional shape of the reading mark. So Nachor is now taking upon himself to say that his opinion is something that is important and something that should be disseminated. Holido, his producing, with a munach, so he's separated out and moving forward. Therefore, his producing from the firstborn an outstanding personality became the main purpose of his life, as denoted by the shape of the reading mark. So he is going to get to a different concept that he's going to, or a concept that we had before in many of the previous generations, but we haven't seen the last 2 or 3 generations, that he is going to try and invest all of his time and effort into his firstborn son. Et Terach, with the katon, with the 2-part note. He tried to coordinate with Terach his inclinations along with respective training and instructions in order to make him most complete and competent, as pointed out by the bipartite shape of the reading mark. So he is going to try to give Terach that sense of independence that he's got himself as well, and hence the 2 parts. Although he's influencing them, giving this to him, he's telling him, be your own person. Sha Esrei, 19, with a mercha, lightly connected but mostly moving forward. Nachor attended to his endeavors regarding Terach for 19 years, rendering him exhaustive preparation for the future, as suggested by the directional shape of the reading mark. So he's going to be an influence, but mostly move him forward into what's going to go on. Shana, year, with a tipcha, closing off the phrase and pausing afterwards. Each year, Terach's maturation was perfected until he was considered able to draw his own conclusions, as expressed by the closing shape of the directional reading mark. So after all of these years, Terach became self-sufficient and able to be an influencer of his own right. Ume'at, and 100 with a munach. Number 8, Nachor devoted many years to Terach, and 100 years he conducted his own style of living, as specified by the shape of the reading mark. So while he had given that first 19 years to make Terach an influence in and of himself, Nachor lived his own life and was his own person for the remainder of his years. Shana, year, for the stabilizing etachta. Each year of that period he spent for the benefit of the entire family, not favoring one more than the other, as illustrated by the stabilizing shape of the reading mark. So here we're saying the stability is the fact that he is giving to all of his children. Again, yet a different concept imposed on the word with the same note because of the context of the personality of the father who we're talking about and the influences and inputs that he has. And again, probably conceptually related to the meaning or Kabbalah of his name.